The year the Ava family went bankrupt. Leo, who had bullied me at school, bought me for 3 million yuan. In the 5th year of being his mistress, he suddenly suffered a plane crash, and all his property was left to me. 3 years later, I traveled back to his 18th year. The young man at that time had a tattooed arm, was biting a lollipop, and menacingly asked me to let him copy my homework. I poured a basin of water on him, drenching the tattoo on his body. In front of his lackeys, I grabbed his ear. Try being mean to me again. Leo. On the anniversary of Leo's death, I went to the flower shop early to buy fresh white chrysanthemums and also packed his favorite G and Bing Guozi Chinese crepe. But the car accident came unexpectedly. Blood splattered on the white chrysanthemums in the passenger seat. I thought I could finally go to find him. Hey. The new one. Lend me your math homework to copy. The man who had skipped school for a week, biting a lollipop, menacingly asked me to let him copy my homework. I stared at Leo in front of me, and my eyes unconsciously turned red. This was probably a dream. They say that before a person dies, they will see the person they most want to see. Wendy, Leo's #1 lackey, saw that I didn't say anything for a long time. So he kicked the table with his foot. Leo is talking to you. I pulled myself out of my emotions, looked around, and reached out to pinch my arm. Hiss. It hurt a bit. Could it not be a dream? I looked at the face that had often appeared in my dreams for 3 years, crying and laughing at the same time. I traced the vivid, lively, and living Leo with my eyes. Wendy was frightened by my crazy appearance and grabbed Leo's wrist to pull him away. Wendy pointed at his own head and muttered in a low voice, "Is that new transfer student a bit crazy in the head?" Leo glanced at me out of the corner of his eye and gave Wendy a slap on the back of his head. "Stop talking nonsense." After being in a daze for the whole morning, I gradually came to terms with the fact that I had been reborn. Most of the time, my gaze was fixed on Leo. After Leo bought me home for 3 million yuan, he settled me in a villa under his name. My food, clothing, and living conditions were all the best. At first, he only came once a week and never stayed overnight. Once, when he was drunk, he and I ended up in bed in a muddle. Gradually, Leo came 3 times a week. Apart from the physical intimacy, we rarely communicated, like to strangers. I always thought that to him, I was just indispensable mistress. Until Leo suddenly suffered a plane crash and he left all his property to me. I once thought they had made a mistake, but the lawyer said that this will had been drawn up in the 1st year after I was bought back. After signing the documents, Leo's secretary handed me a voice recorder. Leo left a message for me. He told me to live a good life and wished that I could find a lover to spend my whole life with. On countless silent and sleepless late nights, I could only fall asleep with the help of sleeping pills and that recording. Before I knew it, tears wet my face. Wendy poked Leo, who was sound asleep on the desk, awake and pointed in my direction. "Leo, hadinka felt my obsession. Tell me honestly if you've done something to let that girl down." Leo raised his red-pressed face, frowned, and his voice was lazy and hoarse. "Wendy, you have quite an imagination." The bell rang for the end of class, and it was lunchtime. I walked up to Leo and knocked on his desk. "Classmate, I don't know how to get to the school cafeteria. Can you take me there?" Leo glanced at me, and there was some impatience between his brows. "I'm not free. Find someone else." I stood in front of him persistently. He looked at me disapprovingly and sneered. "Transfer student. Do you know who I am?" "Leo. The school bully of No. 1 middle school. You know. Yet you still dare to provoke me." "I'm not afraid of you." Leo leaned against the wall as if he had no bones, his school uniform jacket hanging loosely. And he sneered lazily. "Not afraid of me? Could it be that you like me?" I nodded generously and admitted, "Yes. I like you and want to chase you." The 32-year-old Leo liked to force me to say embarrassing words in bed. The 18-year-old Leo was obviously much more innocent. With just a word of like, the tips of his ears turned pink. Leo was taken aback for a moment. "You're not my type." This was the biggest joke I had ever heard. I raised my eyebrows. "It doesn't matter. You don't like me now, but you will in the future." Leo poked his cheek with his tongue, laughed out of anger, and said, "You have quite a thick skin." Seeing that I wouldn't back down, Leo got up and led me to the cafeteria. After getting the food, I sat directly opposite Leo. Leo glanced at me and didn't say anything more. As the school bully of No. 1 middle school, Leo had a group of middle school lackeys who followed him. Not long after sitting down, a group of people came towards Leo with their food. Guys with yellow hair, wearing earrings, and not wearing the school uniform. Someone couldn't help but be curious. "Leo, who is she?" "Don't know. Your future sister-in-law," Leo and I said in unison. Everyone looked at me, then at Leo, and for a moment, they didn't know who to believe. "Classmate. We just met today. Don't spread rumors." The year the Eva family went bankrupt, I moved him the spacious and bright villa to a damp and narrow basement. The group of debt collectors chased after me every day. When I got home from work at 2 bright red paint was splashed on my doorstep. I once thought that I would probably lie in the mud for the rest of my life. I couldn't escape, and I couldn't break free. But then Leo appeared. He spent 3 million yuan to pay off my debts and took me home. I sat in the Lincoln car, feeling a bit dazed. After not seeing him for many years, my impression of him was still that of the school bully who fought and skipped classes in high school. The Leo in my memory always liked to copy my homework. I once saw him fighting desperately. He was full of hostility, and no one dared to approach him. I was terribly afraid of him. My classmates around me once thought that I was being bullied at school by him and advised me to talk to the teacher on my own initiative. Leo noticed my uneasiness and gradually started to distance himself from me. I didn't have much interaction with him. When we met again after a long separation, he had become the founder of a new technology company. "Do you remember me?" "Yes, heading fulfilled mind Sai. I do." After school, when I was on my way home, I found that Leo was gathering a crowd to fight in an alley not far from the school. He took off his school uniform jacket, and his arms were covered with tattoos. There were injuries on his eyebrow, bone and the corner of his mouth. He had just finished fighting and was leaning on Wendy without any proper posture. If I hadn't been with him for 5 years, I would have suspected that he had something going on with Wendy. I walked over and took the cigarette out of his mouth. He looked at me distaphonially. His eyes were cold, and his tone was fierce. "Tsk. You really think of yourself as my girlfriend?" Except in bed, Leo wouldn't bear to say harsh words to me. Sure enough, young people don't know what's appropriate. In front of all his lackeys, I grabbed his ear. "Try being mean to me again?" Wendy was taken aback for a moment. His eyes widened in horror. Seeing that Leo didn't get angry, he looked as if he had seen a ghost. Leo slapped my hand away and glanced back at Wendy. Wendy scratched his head, gave a simple-minded smile, and very sensibly led his lackeys away. I grabbed Leo's hand and pulled him to a nearby pharmacy. "Stand there obediently and wait for me." Then, let out a low sigh. Thinking about it, I was still afraid that he would slip away. "You'd better come in with me." When I was applying medicine to Leo, he was very uncooperative. "Leo, I'll be angry if you keep this up." I had a cold expression and stared at him in silence. In my previous life, when I was first taken home by Leo, my mental state was very poor. I often woke up from nightmares in the middle of the night. My parents who had suddenly died in a car accident, the ruthlessness of my boyfriend after the family went bankrupt, and the intimidation of the debt collectors. All these things weighed on my heart like huge stones. I became taciturn and depressed, and even had the tendency to self-harm. My pale arms were covered with green and purple scratch marks. Every time I saw Leo, I would wear long sleeves and wrap myself up tightly. Unexpectedly, he still found out. When he was applying medicine to me, I felt uncomfortable and wanted to hide. Leo held my wrist. "Eva, I'll be angry if you keep this up." His eyes were pitch black and deep, hiding something I couldn't understand. Leo sneered and shook off my hand. "Eva, Ebisara. Hasn't anyone ever told you that a good student like you shouldn't get involved with a bad student like me?" After saying that, he rolled up his sleeves, revealing 2 arms covered with tattoos. I didn't say anything. I unscrewed the mineral water bottle beside me and poured it on his arms. The tattoos on his arms faded when they got wet. Leo didn't expect me to do this and stood there in a daze. After a few seconds, there was a bit more annoyance and anger on his face from being exposed. The next day when I went to school, I found that Leo's seat was empty. He was late again. I took out my little notebook and wrote down his name severely. After the first class in the morning, he finally arrived late. After coming to the classroom, he lay down on the desk and fell asleep. It was hard to imagine that this Leo would become a workaholic who often worked overtime more than 10 years later. And even develop a stomach problem because of work. I walked over and knocked on his desk. The person hiding under the school uniform jacket moved and groaned impatiently. Seeing that he didn't wake up, I knocked again. Leo lifted the school uniform jacket, raised his eyelids, and looked at me coldly, with displeasure from being woken up between his brows and eyes. Stop sleeping and get up to study. He poked his cheek, made a TSK sound, stood up noisily, picked up his school uniform jacket, and walked outside. When I returned to my seat, my desk mate timidly reminded me, "Ava, you'd better not interfere in Leo's affairs next time. He has a really bad case of getting angry when he wakes up. Usually, the teacher doesn't even care when he sleeps in class. And he's really fierce and fights brutally." I smiled. "Thank you for your kindness. But I really want to take care of his affairs. I not only want to take care of him now, but also for a lifetime." Seeing that I was insistent, my desk mate pursed her lips and didn't say anything more. After Leo left, he didn't come back for the whole morning. He skipped class again. I wrote down his name severely in the little notebook again. During the break, I stopped Wendy. "Where's your Leo?" He stammered for a while and then told the truth, "He's sleeping in the next class." When I arrived, I happened to see a girl blushing and giving a gift to Leo. Leo saw me, raised his eyebrows at me, and provocatively took the gift the girl handed him. My heart felt a pang of pain, and my eyes couldn't help but turn red. The Leo in my previous life would never let me misunderstand his relationship with other girls. Every time there was some gossip, he would go back to the villa immediately and explain the situation to me clearly, either explicitly or implicitly. Leo, you don't have to do this. I'm just a mistress you bought for 3 million yuan. Leo saw my awkwardness. Eva, you don't just receive the treatment of a mistress." His burning gaze made my cheeks flush. I lowered my head and didn't respond to his words. My heart in my chest was pounding wildly. Leo gave me so much a sense of security that I had never imagined what it would be like if he didn't belong to me. I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes in a flurry and turned to leave. When I turned around, Leo returned the gift and apologized. All day long, my heart felt a bit stuffy and heavy. Out of anger, I took out my little notebook and started keeping accounts again. The 18-year-old Leo attracts others and doesn't abide by male virtues. After school in the afternoon, I ran to the internet CAF that Leo often went to catch him. 2 hooligans blocked me in an alley. Their eyes were lewd and disgusting. "Little sister, are you alone? Do you want Big Brother to keep you company?" I coldly refused. "No need. I'm here to find my boyfriend." "You have a boyfriend?" Then let out a low sigh. "Is your boyfriend more handsome? Or am I more handsome?" As he spoke, he leaned towards me. Just as I took out the anti-wolf stun baton from my bag, I saw Leo not far away. "Leo." I squeezed out a few tears. Looking flustered and scared, Leo walked towards me with a serious face. The 2 hooligans didn't take him seriously because he looked young. "I advise you not to meddle in other people's business." Before they could finish their tough words, they were beaten black and blue. I hid behind Leo and kicked them hard a few times where he couldn't see. After driving the hooligans away, I grabbed the corner of Leo's clothes and looked at him with teary eyes. "Leo, I'm a bit scared. Can you walk me home?" After a moment of silence, Leo gave in. "Let's go." As the night fell, the streetlight gradually turned on. I followed behind Leo and quietly stepped on his shadow. "Leo, Hadanusai. Could you please not skip classes in the future? Not go to internet cafes? Not get involved with other girls? And work hard with me to get into university?" Leo turned his head and said with a hint of mockery in his tone. Ava. Don't push your luck. I grabbed his collar, pulled it down, and covered his mouth that couldn't speak properly. Leo was stunned for a few seconds, then suddenly stepped back and stammered to condemn me. Ava. Why are you like a female bandit? He looked like an innocent man who had been molested, without the slightest trace of the arrogant school bully he used to be. I took a step forward, and he took a step back. Leo. This was my first kiss. You have to take responsibility for me. His eyebrows knitted into a frown. Don't be unreasonable. This was your first kiss. And it was mine too. Okay? Leo's first kiss. I reached out and touched my lips. My heart was as sweet as if filled with honey. Leo's face froze even more, and he looked at me like I was a pervert. He didn't say anything more and quietly slipped away. I shouted at his back. Leo. You can't run away. He quickened his pace. The 32-year-old Leo likes to tease me, making my heart race and my face turn red. But the 18-year-old Leo fled in a panic under my burning gaze. Starting from the next day, I became even more presumptuous and started to supervise Leo's studies. In my last life, Leo always liked to copy my homework. Sometimes, he even asked me to write test papers for him. When passing by the alley after school, I had seen him fight desperately. The vicious look in his eyes shocked me. I was afraid of getting involved with him and silently endured his bullying, until he was expelled from school. Now the situation has reversed. In this life, I'm supervising Leo's studies. Leo. You didn't finish your homework last night again. Leo. Don't sleep in class. Leo. You failed the exam again. Leo. Could you please be more serious? Leo's face became more and more unpleasant, and his voice involuntarily rose. Ava. You're really annoying. Shouted at by him like this. My eyes turned red, and a layer of mist filled my eyes. Leo. I want to go to university in the same city as you. He pursed his lips and didn't say anything. The 32-year-old Leo would never be mean to me. If he made me unhappy, he would buy gifts and clumsily try to coax me. I looked at this familiar yet unfamiliar face, and tears couldn't help but slide down. The 18-year-old Leo is not him after all. I lowered my head and softly said sorry. When going home after school in the afternoon, Leo carried his school bag and followed me at a distance. I was holding a grudge in my heart and didn't want to pay attention to him. I just wanted to get rid of him quickly. I walked too fast and didn't notice the car on the road. Leo grabbed my school bag and pulled me back. The driver rolled down the car window and cursed. Little girl. Your eyes are for looking at the road, not at the floor. My face turned red with embarrassment. And like an ostrich, I buried my head lower and lower. After the car drove away, Leo took out a piece of candy from his pocket. Sorry. I was a bit harsh in my words today. Please forgive me, as you're magnanimous and won't hold it against me. Okay? Tears rolled down my face all of a sudden. In a trance, I seemed to see the 32-year-old Leo. I shakily reached out my hand and gently traced Leo's outline. Just for a moment, I timidly withdrew my hand, afraid that this was just a dream. Seeing me cry, Leo panicked. His hand hung stiffly in the air, not knowing where to put it. After a while, that hand gently landed on my back and patted it tenderly. Leo softened his voice. Sorry. It was my fault. Please don't cry. Okay? I sniffled and said with a sobbing voice. No. You were mean to me. If you want me to stop crying, you have to promise that you won't be mean to me in the future. Leo raised 3 fingers above his head. I promise. Leo, will never be mean to Ava in the future. After that day, Leo seemed to have changed completely. He obediently did his homework and studied. When Wendy came to ask him to go out and have fun, Leo impatiently pushed him away with his elbow. Get lost. You're disturbing my study. Wendy looked out the window with a puzzled look. The sun didn't rise from the west today, did it? I came to give Leo my notes. Don't let him astray. Wendy widened his eyes, pointed at himself, then at Leo, and looked wronged. Me? Lead him astray? Leo sat on the chair carelessly, his eyes full of laughter. I looked at that high-spirited face and couldn't help but be distracted. My heart started beating faster uncontrollably. Wendy's gaze shifted back and forth between me and Leo. Sister-in-law. I admire no one but you. Leo blushed. Wendy. Do you want a beating? In my last life, Leo was expelled from school because of a group fight. It was rumored that Leo used a knife and almost beat the people on the other side to death. Some said he did it out of anger for a girl. Some said it was for the sake of brotherhood. And some even speculated that he just fought in a group without any reason. In my previous life, I didn't care about the truth. I just secretly rejoiced that I no longer had to do his homework for him. But in this life, I will never let history repeat itself. I bribed Wendy and asked him to keep an eye on Leo for me. Wendy thought I was jealous and patted his chest to assure me. Sister-in-law. Don't worry. I will definitely keep an eye on Leo and prevent him from flirting with other girls outside. After Wendy agreed, every time Leo went out to play with him, he would send me a message. Those girls wanted to talk to Leo a few more words. But Leo didn't even look at them. I've been friends with Leo for so many years. You're the first one who can get close to him. And you've got him completely under your control. Although Leo seems flirty, he's actually very innocent. I recalled the first kiss that night and the blushing and furious Leo. He is indeed innocent. I smiled and sent Wendy an emoji to express my thanks. On the weekend, I dragged Leo to a CAF to study together. Leo is smart and can understand many problems after being taught once. He is the kind of student who can easily get good grades without much effort, which is both enviable and jealousy-inducing. After studying, he walked me home. Leo. It's my birthday next week. I looked up at him. My eyes clearly showing what I wanted. I wanted a gift. I wanted him to accompany me even more. Leo chuckled. I know. My family is somewhat well known in the local area. My mother personally organized my birthday party and invited many classmates and friends. That day, I invited Leo to my home. Leo was wearing a simple hoodie and jeans. Compared with those young men and women in suits and evening gowns, he seemed a bit out of place. Even so, he was still the most eye-catching presence in the crowd. The gift that Leo gave me was a bracelet. After receiving it, I couldn't wait to open it and put it on my wrist, then dragged him to the backyard. Sitting on the swing, I raised my wrist to look at the bracelet. The more I looked at it, the more I liked it. This was the first gift that the 18-year-old Leo gave me. He stood silently behind me and gently pushed the swing. Leo. Thank you. You're the birthday girl tonight. It's not very good to hide here. But I just want to be here. Leo. You know what? Those people outside are nice to me because my family is rich. But you're not like that. In my previous life, after my family went bankrupt, those so-called friends avoided me like the plague. Only Leo, who had bullied me before, pulled me out of the abyss. In this life, I don't want to waste time with them just for the sake of appearances. After swinging for a while, my mother called me to cut the cake. I wanted Leo to go with me, but he refused. Okay then. You wait here for a while. And I'll bring you a piece. After going through the formalities, those friends pulled me aside and chatted with me enthusiastically. As we were chatting, they became curious about Leo. Leo had never appeared in our circle before, and his clothes were relatively simple. When they talked about Leo, there was a hint of contempt in their tone. Emma, you're still too naive. People like him are just relying on their looks. He must have ulterior motives for getting close to you. You mustn't be carried away by him. Dirty people always use their own dirty thoughts to speculate about others. I couldn't stand others saying anything bad about Leo. If you say one more word, we can't even be friends on the surface. When I went back with the cake in my hand, Leo had already left. He sent me a message saying that he had something urgent and had to leave first. I looked at the cake in my hand and couldn't hide my disappointment. At night, my mother came to bring me warm milk. She stared at the bracelet on my wrist and secretly probed. That male classmate today was quite handsome. I didn't plan to hide it from my family. Yeah. He's your future son-in-law. She became serious. Eva, sorry. You're still in high school. Mom. Don't worry. I won't fall in love before the college entrance examination. I also promise that I won't let this affect my studies. I can still tell what's important and what's not. She sat down and helped me smooth the stray hairs on my forehead. It's normal to have a crush on the opposite sex during adolescence. But mom doesn't want you to suffer. In this society, girls generally have it harder than boys. My eyes suddenly felt hot. And it was as if someone had choked my throat. In my previous life, they left me in a hurry because of a sudden car accident. The departure of loved ones is not like a sudden rainstorm, but like the long-lasting dampness of this life. In the following years, I was overwhelmed with grief. Every time I thought of how kind they had been to me and then looked at myself, all alone, my heart ached as if being wrung. In this life, I won't let the tragedy repeat itself. I threw myself into her arms like a fledgling bird. She was taken aback at first. And then she burst into laughter. She pinched my cheek and said, "What's wrong? Your dad and I have been busy on business trips these days and haven't accompanied you well. You must feel wronged." I shook my head and said, "Mom, I haven't slept with you for a long time. Can you stay with me tonight?" She hesitated for a moment and said, "But what about your dad?" "Never mind him. Let him stay alone in the empty room." When my dad heard the news, his face darkened immediately. But in front of his daughter, he didn't want to show his jealousy blatantly. After his birthday, Leo started to distance himself from me. Although it wasn't obvious, I still noticed it. Connecting the expressions on Leo's birthday party, I vaguely guessed the reason. My heart felt like it was soaked in lemonade, sour and swollen. After school, I found an opportunity to have a private conversation with Leo. "Leo, you've been avoiding me these days." He instinctively denied it. "No, I haven't." I stared at him clearly and said, "You think you're not good enough for me." My words pierced through Leo's hidden thoughts. He raised his hand to cover his eyes and pulled the corners of his mouth's self-deprecating lie. "Adiva, you really. Leo, it's not me who has money. I'm just benefiting from my dad. Moreover, you just don't have money now. You'll be very wealthy in the future." I said with great certainty. "I can't even be sure about the future myself." "How can you be so certain?" "Because I believe in you. I believe that the Leo I know is a capable, ambitious person who is not willing to be subservient to others." Leo didn't say anything. And there was a turbulent emotion in his deep black eyes. "What if I can never earn money in the future? Would you still be willing to be with me?" "Leo, you've got the order wrong. To me, you are first Leo. And then the Leo who can make money. In my previous life, even when I was at my most down and out and in a sorry state, he didn't despise me. I was like a withered flower. And he patiently watered me with his love, gradually rebuilding my spirit and strength. The current Leo is a tree that hasn't grown up yet. And of course, I will accompany him to thrive. But I won't be a supporting flower. Instead, I will stand side by side with him. I won't live under his protection. But I will spread my wings to create a shelter for the people I want to protect. Even though I tried my best to prevent the things from happening as they did in my previous life, what was supposed to happen still couldn't be avoided. The gangsters from the neighboring school brought people to take revenge on Wendy. They beat him severely in the dark alley and left him seriously injured. At first, the brothers around Leo tried every means to hide it from him. But there's no such thing as a secret that can't be leaked. Leo still found out. He took a leave of absence to go to the hospital to visit Wendy. Wendy's left leg was in a cast and was hanging up. He raised his bruised and purple mouth and playfully fought with Leo. Leo's hands hanging down clenched into fists. And he pursed his lips without saying a word. He made an excuse to go out for some air and hid at the stairwell to smoke. When I found him, he was leaning against the wall dejectedly, and his eyes were bloodshot. "Leo, don't be impulsive. There's no surveillance in that alley. Wendy can't just suffer these injuries in vain." "Then what do you want to do? Go and take revenge with your brothers and bring weapons?" Leo didn't say anything. "Leo, if the school finds out, you'll be expelled." I took his hand and pleaded, "Don't do anything stupid. Let's think about this matter carefully. They will pay the price they deserve." After calming Leo down, I kept checking the surveillance footage of the streets near the alley. After 3 days of investigation, I found that a very remote surveillance camera had captured the key evidence. As soon as I handed the evidence to the police, I was informed that Leo had arranged a fight with others. Sitting in the police car, I couldn't stop my body from shaking and feeling cold. I was afraid that Leo would be expelled just like in my previous life. And I was even more afraid that he would get hurt. When we arrived, we found that Leo was letting others beat him without making a sound and didn't resist. The police quickly subdued the gangsters. And when they searched them, they found several knives. The leader gritted his teeth and said, "Leo, you actually dared to set us up." When I saw those knives, I almost couldn't stand. The image of Leo leading me played over and over again in my mind. At that moment, I felt that all the blood in my body was shivering with cold. Leo was taken to the hospital. And I remained silent all the way. He reached out several times to hook my little finger, but I dodged every time. When Leo called my name, I didn't respond either. I stared at his bruised face and remembered the last time I saw Leo in my previous life. At that time, I rushed to the hospital in a hurry and saw a pale and cold corpse. All my strength was instantly drained, and I slumped to the ground, crying silently. We had clearly agreed that I would cook him small wontons when he came back, but in the end, he left without saying a word. After that day, my world fell back into darkness. Living was more painful than death. I couldn't imagine what would happen if those people took out their knives. Would there be a corpse in front of me now? Just thinking about this possibility made me unable to calm down. I couldn't bear the pain of losing him again. Tears wet my whole face. After that day, I ignored Leo. Leo was very anxious and tried every means to coax me. Ava, I really know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so reckless. Please talk to me. Okay? I pushed him away and said, Leo, if we don't get into the same city for university, then we're done. Leo started to study desperately, and his grades improved so quickly that even the teachers were astonished. Wendy came to me and said, "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry. Please don't be angry with Leo. If Leo hadn't wanted to avenge me, he wouldn't have been so impulsive." I interrupted him. "Wendy, it's not your fault. I'm just scared. Scared to the bone." On the day the college entrance examination admission results came out, Leo bought a bouquet of flowers and ran to my house. He sent me a message to ask me to come out. When he saw me, he became as stiff as a wooden stake. "Ava," I got admitted. "We don't have to be separated in university." I took the flowers and softly responded with an. He grabbed my hand, knelt down on one knee, and said, "Ava, I really know I was wrong. I promise I'll discuss things with you before doing them in the future. Please don't ignore me anymore. Okay? I haven't been able to eat or sleep well these days. I've been going crazy every day. I really, hadn't förstått när jag säger, really like you. Will you be my girlfriend?" His hand was trembling, and there was a slight choke in his voice. My eyes were wet, and I said, "Then you have to promise that you'll never leave me for the rest of your life." Leo nodded solemnly. "I promise." "Okay. I promise you." Leo stood up and pulled me into his arms. I clutched the fabric around his waist and greedily enjoyed the warmth that Leo brought me. Leo's body suddenly stiffened. Ava, your parents are standing by the window watching us. Your dad's eyes look like he wants to eat me." I smiled and said, "Then why don't you let go?" "I don't want to." After hugging for a while, Leo reluctantly let go of me. He wanted to tidy up the stray hair on my forehead. But from my dad's perspective, it looked as intimate as if we were kissing. A very loud cough sounded. Leo retracted his hand and obediently kept a distance from me. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Do you want to come to my house and have a seat?" Leo shook his head. "No. My neck feels cold now. I'll come and pay a formal visit when I'm ready with gifts someday." He looked back at me 3 times in one step as he accompanied me home. After I got home, I found a vase and put the flowers in it. My dad snorted. "Don't put it in the living room. It's an eyesore." Leo and I officially started dating during the summer vacation. After we started dating, my dad would sit in the living room at 9 o'clock every night waiting for me to come back. My mom was very happy. Our daughter is old enough. and it's normal for her to be in a relationship. My dad still grunted unhappily. Ava, invite your boyfriend over for a meal at home when you have time. On the day Leo came to our house, my dad disliked him in various ways and gave him one order after another. My mom signaled to him with her eyes that he should stop. Don't make things difficult for Leo. Leo forced a smile and said, Auntie, it's okay. I like doing chores. My dad immediately replied, if you like doing it, then do more. When I saw Leo off at night, he looked dejected. Uncle seems to dislike me very much. Looking at his aggrieved expression like a big dog, I laughed. What would you do if our daughter were in a relationship in the future? Leo's face darkened. I'd break that kid's legs. Leo's university and mine were separated by a street. On the day of the school registration, Leo helped me move my luggage and then went back to his own school to sort out his things. After he finished tidying up, he came to find me for dinner. Coincidentally, hadn't so me. We met a senior who asked me for my contact information. I walked over and entwined my fingers with Leo's. Senior, this is my boyfriend. The senior was taken aback for a moment, and the disappointment in his eyes couldn't be hidden. Leo's face clearly showed, I'm jealous. Come and coax me. I stood on tiptoe and gave him a kiss on the face. Then what do you want? Should I write in my WeChat signature, I already have a boyfriend. Please don't disturb. Leo replied awkwardly. It's not impossible. That night, he changed his WeChat signature to, already have a girlfriend version. After entering university, Leo began to work extremely hard to make money. At first, he just took part-time jobs. After finding the right channels, he followed his senior schoolmates to work on projects and earned extra money with his technical skills. On weekends, I would study by myself in the library, and he would come to keep me company. When he was tired, he would lie on the table and fall asleep. The dark circles under his eyes made me feel sorry for. I stroked his face and said, Leo, you don't have to work so hard. He rubbed against my palm and gently shook his head. Ava, since you're with me, I can't let you live a worse life than you do now. Seeing that I frowned and didn't speak, he tried to tease me. If I don't learn some skills and earn some money, I'm afraid that next time I go to your house, your dad won't let me in. Since he was determined to move forward, I silently supported him from behind. Leo majored in computer science, and I majored in management. Starting from our freshman year, using the excuse of sharing my father's workload, I began to keep an eye on the company's projects. I avoided several major decision-making mistakes and even saw through the opponent's poison pill plan. The seniors in the company all said that I had the same style as my father when he was young, and they all called me President Eva. Starting from our junior year, every winter and summer vacation, my father would hand over the burden of the company to me and take my mother on a trip. I owe your mother a trip for so many years, and I should finally pay it back. Daughter, I'm sorry to trouble you. I was busy, and Leo was also busy. Starting from our junior year, he partnered with others to start a company. After having dinner, we would have a video call and each focus on our own work. During the break, when I caught a glimpse of Leo's focused eyebrows and eyes, I just felt that my heart was filled with happiness. My family, my career, and Leo were all there. Leo, have you ever heard the saying that a man who is serious is the most attractive? Leo stopped and said, Ava, don't flirt randomly. I raised my eyebrows and provocatively and a few buttons of my pajamas. Desire surged in his dark eyes, and Leo's Adam's apple rolled up and down. He gritted his teeth and said a few words in a low voice. I smiled and agreed. In the year we graduated, I gave a speech on stage as an outstanding graduate. Leo sat in the front row, looking extremely proud. However, when he saw the admiration shown by the opposite sex towards me, he became sulky and extremely jealous. As soon as I stepped off the stage, he couldn't wait to hold my hand and put his arm around my waist to show his possessiveness. My parents were amused by his childish behavior. Although my father didn't say it explicitly, he had already accepted him as his son-in-law. 3 years after graduating from university, my father began to step back into the background, and I became the president of the company. Leo's company also reached the Series D financing stage. Occasionally, when we met at a banquet, some people would be busy introducing us to each other. President Ava. This is President Leo. Leo curved his lips and reached out his hand. Nice to meet you. I shook his hand. And Leo gently drew a line on my palm, which made me feel a bit ticklish. At night, when he was being naughty with me, Leo would call me President Ava in my ear with a mischievous tone, and he would increase his strength with each call. I was so annoyed that I wanted to hit him. But I found that I didn't have any strength left in my body. I wanted to scold him. But the words broke into pieces before I could say them. I really couldn't swallow my anger. When he kissed me, I took the opportunity to bite him. Leo hissed, and his eyes became even darker. Your teeth are quite sharp. I retorted. Whether they're sharp or not, don't you know? My momentary outburst led to another round of attack. After taking a shower in the middle of the night, I came out and Leo let me rest my head on his lap. He gently blew dry my hair. After drying my hair, he kissed between my eyebrows and said, Ava, I love you. I responded with an, and raised my hand to wrap around his waist. The engagement ring on my finger glinted coldly in the moonlight. Leo's perspective side story 5 years after graduation. I flew to the Bay Area in the United States to negotiate business. On the way back by plane, we encountered a thunderstorm. When facing death, it's hard to tell whether the scenes were playing in my mind are hallucinations or dreams. At first, there were some fragmented clips. In the black and white pictures, Ave appeared in every frame. She was kneeling in the hospital, wailing in front of the body, covered with a white cloth. She was clutching a voice recorder and curling up in the corner of the bed, unable to fall asleep all night as she stared at the moonlight outside the window. She refused others, pursued without hesitation, saying that she already had a lover. She studied desperately and tried her best to help me run the company. She wore the clothes I liked the most to see me. But she lost her life in that car accident. In the last sec and before death came, she didn't feel fear, but only relief and anticipation. Those distant scenes were like a chisel that suddenly pierced through the ice layer and struck my heart. The flowing air turned into a knife for slow torture. And it was so difficult to take each breath. I covered my face and couldn't help but let out a sob. Big tears rolled out of my eyes. Ava, why were you so silly? After getting off the plane, I saw Ava waiting at the exit. She was crying. Like a child who had just learned to walk, she stumbled towards me. I reached out and put my arm around her waist. The burning tears burned a big hole in my heart. Leo. She murmured my name, confirming my presence over and over again. Trembling. Helplessness. Panic. Fear. Was Ava like this at that time too? But fortunately, hadn't fulfilledly. This time I caught her. Ava, let's get married. Okay. The end.